When we hear everything going on in the industry right now, especially with coaching, I was talking to a very close friend of mine, Mike Carroll, who runs a company called Intelligent Conversations. And Mike and I actually own condos together, and we call it Sunday Night Properties because we get together every other Sunday and we just talk about life and talk about our coaching businesses. And the funny thing is, we realized after about the first year, which started now well over 10 years ago, we actually compete, but we don't really compete. And the reason I say that is we are constantly helping each other with our businesses. And Mike is really good, really gifted. He goes, "Well, let's role play it. Let's role play it. Let's role play it." I do the same thing. And I said, Mike, I don't know if this comes off the right or wrong way, but we're really good at this. And we start laughing. And I said, we're really fluid because we practice so much. Now, when I think about leaders coaching, I often will share to our clients, it's like learning a different language. It's much different to go up to someone with a negative attitude and say, "Annie, you have a terrible attitude," versus going up to Annie and saying, "What are you going to do to positively engage with your teammates and what's that benefit to them and you?" That will garner a different reaction. That's a different way of talking to the same subject. So, what's going to happen to our industry? Let me give you some predictions. I actually think AI is going to cause us to actually have a need for greater human based coaching. Here's why. I think there will be mistakes. I think there will be misunderstandings. I think it's going to require some more prompt engineering, if you will, by the point of the end user on behalf of the end user to engage with an AI tool. And by the way, we use AI tools. We build AI tools. We're not against AI. We love AI. Yet that human connection, when that employee goes up to a boss and asks a question and it's impromptu, that's really kind of a situational coaching opportunity. Now, when we're, let's say, in a bank or a credit union, we spot a teller not having a great conversation with a customer member, that's spot coaching. I got to, I see something that's wrong. I got to coach to that. Or I see something that they're doing really well and I got to coach to that. That's spot coaching. And then we have something called continuous coaching, which is what we teach, teaching with our progress coaching principles. So, what happens when somebody has an argument situationally with an employee and they come up and say, "Geez, I had a really tough conversation with Lisa. I really would love some advice on how to handle it. She was really mad." Now, if you're doing that with an AI tool and they give you maybe some feedback that isn't as accurate, we're going to start to gravitate too quickly. I'll just go ask my boss. But that puts pressure on the boss because in that situation, we want to fix that situation. That's not how things work. So when somebody has a tough conversation with this hypothetical employee, Lisa, one conversation between the two of them is not going to be suffice. They're going to have to practice working better together. Let me give you another example. So I was in front of a CEO group, and I love sharing this story. And it was actually just fairly recent. And this one guy goes, "Wow, we have a pretty good leadership team, and I think we're well prepared with the changes that are coming with AI and automation and the revolution of artificial intelligence." And I said, "Can I test that?" He said, "Sure." And I said, one guy next to him goes, "He's good. Are you ready?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, I'm ready." And I said, "Okay, I'd like to role play with you, but I want to pretend I'm an employee at your company, CEO." He said, "Sure." I said, "Is AI going to replace my job?" And he just sat there, looked back at his friend. I said, "Is AI going to replace my job? Is my job okay?" And he broke out a role play instantly. He goes, "Well, Tim, and that's no, no, no. We're in role play. You told me you and your leadership team was ready." And he just sat there. And he goes, "Wow." I go, "So my job's on the line. You're not telling me something." So I stopped the role play. 30 seconds. Everyone in the group is starting to laugh. And he looks at me and goes, "Wow." I go, "Right. Our leaders are put on the spot." By the way, I'm not making fun of leaders. I'm defending leaders because leaders every single day have someone knock on their door and say, "Boss, you got a second?" It's not a second. It's like 19 to 24 minutes. And it's the fourth person who asked during that day. And it puts us in a tough spot. So what's going to happen is, I believe, is that human-based coaching is actually going to go up. I think the need for human connection is going to go up. The more technology goes up, kind of like the pandemic, Zoom and being virtual, our connection to be with people will go up. I think conversations are going to become even more important. Let me just share with you why that matters. What we say matters. How we say it matters. I'll demonstrate for you. So why are you and Lisa not getting along? Versus, well, what causes and what can I do to assist you for the next conversation? Those two prompts, those two interactions will garner vastly different answers. Now, if I have an employee come to me and say, I've got this situation, and I look at my watch and I go, do we have to talk about this now? And I might just be having a bad day. Here's the other thing that's tough for leaders. They're not given a lot of leadership grace. What we say matters, how we say it matters, the language we use matters. So think about this. If you want to address somebody who is really poor with time management, and I just witnessed this, and this is actually fairly common. I literally overheard a leader say, look, your schedule's all over the board. You've got to manage your time. And we're all guilty of this. We start giving this narrative of what they need to do and what they need to fix, but they don't really give a solution on how to do it. And so this person's just really going off on their employee and just giving this narration of why their time management's all over the board and what challenges it's causing. That employee walked away absolutely not knowing anything about what to do with their time management. They just knew it was an issue. So I went up to the supervisor and I said, do you mind if I talk to that employee about time management? I kind of just overheard your conversation. And he goes, well, sure, go ahead. I said, are you cool with this? He said, yeah. So I sat down with the employee. I said, look, I overheard the conversation. Let's just calmly go through this. When you manage your time, how do you do that? The employee literally looks at me and goes, I have changes every hour on the hour. I'm in a reactionary mode. There's no way I can manage my time. I said, interesting. I said, do you have things that you proactively, you have to do? And he said, yeah. I said, let's make a list of those. So he makes a list and I said, okay, now put a time element of what it typically takes you to get those done. He said, okay. I said, now let's make a list of all your reactionary moments of where people come up and say, I need this. And then typically put a time element of what it takes to complete those things. So we had a list that was fairly equal, which was a surprise to me. And I said, when someone comes up to you, do you have to do the reactionary things in a moment? He goes, well, no, not necessarily. I said, well, you have a lot of things of 15 to 20 minutes. Can you carve out one 15 to 20 minute block every hour and leave the rest for reactionary moments? And then put that schedule out and educate your teammates. About 2 weeks go by. He goes, I'm so much more efficient. And he's still not managing his time well. And so here's an example of I kind of dove in to their job. I didn't really understand the job. I tried to understand the methodology of managing time. Oh, by the way, there was none. And so here's the leader giving these mandates without solutions, not even inquiring or being inquisitive as to what do you think's causing this problem? That's the difference between management and coaching. That's where human-based connection makes a huge difference. What are your thoughts?